Hey guys, Magnus Robert here, and today we're going to be looking at a few new family trees. So I've got 3 on here, and they're all kind of small, and they don't have much connection, so I figured we'd just sort of throw them into the same image, and we'd look at all of them individually. So starting off, let's do the Jones family tree, from, obviously, Morgan Jones. So we have Morgan Jones. Obviously he's a character who appears in the pilot, and he survives all the way to the final season of Fear, where, of course, he's now on a mission trying to find Rick Grimes with his adopted daughter. Now, we don't know much about Morgan's parents, but we do learn a little bit about Morgan's brother. No, well, at least that he has a brother. We don't know the fate of this brother. Of course, Morgan was a mechanic, I believe, and he lived in the States, and he married a woman called Jenny Jones. So here's a picture of Jenny Jones. Obviously, she appears in a flashback in Fear the Walking Dead, but also via images in The Walking Dead, and obviously in the pilot, she's a zombie. So these two married, and together they had a son called Dwayne Jones. Now, Dwayne, unfortunately, does die in between season 1 and 3, and then we see his Walker self in a Fear the Walking Dead episode where Morgan finally puts him down. Anyway, moving on. Obviously, Dwayne was killed by his mother too. Moving on, we go back to Morgan. So after many years after Jenny's death, Morgan kind of remained on his own, but, single man. But he eventually started a relationship with Grace Mukherjee. So Grace, of course, worked in a radiation plant. She first appears in Fear the Walking Dead season 5, I believe, right? And my knowledge on Fear is not as strong as my knowledge on the main show. But she unfortunately dies in season 8 after being bitten by a walker, and then eventually she turns and Morgan puts her down. Now, we do learn a little bit about her sister. So I've put her parents on here, but we don't really know much about them. But she does have a sister. And of course, Grace, before she met with Morgan, she had a relationship with a guy she worked with called Matthew. And he unfortunately died from radiation poisoning, but they did have a child together, or they conceived a child together, called Athena, or that Grace was going to call Athena. Now, unfortunately, Athena actually was stillborn, and we saw this in the show. It's pretty traumatic, actually. It was a very traumatic episode. So, yeah, Athena sadly didn't make it. So, moving on, after Grace and Morgan kind of started their relationship, and after Athena, obviously, after Grace was trying to get over the death of Athena, they stumbled across another child, and that was, of course, Morgan. Now, Morgan is actually the child of 2 people. One guy called Isaac was a person that her adopted father, Morgan Jones, helped, and his wife, Rachel. Now, Isaac sadly was bitten and had to be put down, and Rachel basically broke her leg and was sort of forced, in order to save her child, she had sort of killed herself to turn herself into a zombie so her child would find its way to Morgan. It was like that film Cargo, basically. They ripped off that film. And Rachel unfortunately died. So Morgan and Grace adopted Morgan. I know there's a lot of Morgans. And she's called Morgan Jones Mukherjee. But she's nicknamed Mo. So I'll refer to her as Mo. And of course, Mo was actually helped to find her new adopted parents by a dog called Rufus. Now, this pet was actually adopted by Morgan for a brief period of time. And eventually, Rufus, unfortunately, was bitten on the nose by a zombie and was put down by his original owner's brother. So, of course, his original owner was a guy called Emile Leroux, how don't you say it? And Emile obviously he was a bounty hunter, he owned Rufus, and Morgan killed him. Now, Emile actually had a brother who looks just like him. It's almost like it's played by the same actor, called Josiah. Now, Josiah appears in, is it the season 7, potentially, I think it is, and appears a few times, but then he just sort of disappears and we never see him again, unfortunately. Fear the Walking Dead basically forgot about half of its cast of characters, including Josiah, so we don't know the fate of Josiah. Maybe he's still out there, maybe he's still living, but yeah, that's to represent him. Okay, so that is the Morgan Jones family tree. We've sort of gone through all the connections there. And now let's go to the Porter family tree. So let's, of course, start with the man himself, Eugene Herman Porter. So we know a little bit about his grandfather. He talks about his grandfather. He doesn't talk much about his parents, but I've just put them on there anyway. And of course, Eugene, he's a bit of, he's a virgin. He was not really a ladies' man for a while. He came to the Commonwealth and he bagged his first girlfriend, Shira, who he was under the impression was the woman he was speaking to on the radio. But it turned out Shira was just a spy and actually was not the same woman he was talking to. And we actually don't know the fate of her. Weirdly, she just kind of disappears and we never really know what happened to her. Always found that very odd. It turns out the actual woman Eugene was talking to on the radio was someone called Maxine Mercer. And so him and Maxine, as we see in the time skip, eventually marry. And together they have a daughter called Rosie. And it's named after, of course, Rosita. So Rosie Porter is here. Now, Maxine is actually the daughter of her father, Mr. Mercer, and Stephanie Mercer. Now, Stephanie was the name that Maxine used when she was talking to Eugene over the radio. This was the alias she used. And then, obviously, Shira then stole the alias of Stephanie. It's very confusing. But Stephanie actually was the name of Maxine's mother. Now, both of her parents are, unfortunately, dead at this point in the story. However, her older brother, Michael Mercer, is still alive. And of course, currently in the story, Michael Mercer is the Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth, the second in command. And he is dating Juanita Sanchez, aka Princess. So this is obviously Michael's girlfriend. Now, Juanita, aka Princess, is obviously the daughter of her mother and her father. And we learn that her mother and her father divorced, and she didn't really know her dad. I assume he kind of moved away. But Juanita's mother then married a guy called Dougie, who obviously also had a son of his own. Now, Dougie and Juanita's stepbrother were very abusive to Juanita, and Juanita's mother was kind of complicit in it and allowed it to happen. And obviously that caused a lot of problems for Juanita in later life. But it's something that she moved past and was able to kind of, come to terms with. So finally, let's look briefly at Jerry. So Jerry's family tree. So here we have Jerry, of course. And Jerry, of course, married another kingdom member. He's a kingdom member, if you didn't know. He first appears in season 7. And he marries another kingdom member called Nabila. And together they had 3 children, actually. Ezra, Aliyah, and Mariam. And yeah, so just thought I'd include them too. It's pretty cool how Jerry, over the time skip, had a family and just, popped out 3 children. But there we are. So that is it for the Jones family tree, the Porter family tree, and Jerry's family tree. Let me know what family trees you'd like to see next. I have completed my comic book family tree, although it is a monster of a tree, and it's very confusing, but we could look at that maybe next. Or we could do a few more of these, more briefer ones. Or, potentially, if you want, I'm happy to do one for the Fear the Walking Dead or World Beyond. I've got them in the works too, so just let me know. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.